You think you're tough? Staff Sergeant Kyle Merrick's hand clamped around Sarah Kincaid's throat, slamming her back against the padded wall. Show us what a real SEAL does, sweetheart. His breath was hot against her face. Behind him, Travis blocked the door. Marcus held up his phone, red light blinking. Vanessa stood in the corner, arms crossed, watching like she'd seen this before. Sarah didn't struggle, didn't panic. The audio recorder hidden in her sleeve had been running for 9 minutes. They thought they were trapping her. They had no idea she'd walked in here to trap them. In 60 seconds, every single one of them would realize what happens when you corner a Navy SEAL who came prepared. Before we show you how a 28-year-old female operator turned a setup into a federal takedown, hit subscribe and comment your city below. We love seeing how far these stories travel. Because what happens next isn't just about survival. It's about making sure the evidence destroys them before they can destroy you. The Arizona heat hit Sarah Kincaid like a physical force when she stepped off the transport van. Joint Training Facility Braxton sprawled across the desert landscape. Low cinder block buildings, dust-covered vehicles, not a tree in sight. The specialist at reception didn't stand when she walked in. He glanced up from his phone, eyes sliding over her uniform. "Help you?" Sarah placed her orders on the counter. "Lieutenant Kincaid, CQB instructor rotation." He picked up the paperwork with 2 fingers. "Navy?" "Correct." "Huh." He typed slowly, like he was hoping the system would reject her. "Says you're SEAL qualified." "That's right." His mouth twitched. "They really lowering standards that much now?" Sarah kept her face neutral. "Process the order, specialist." He did, grudgingly. The system confirmed everything. He printed her badge and pushed it across the counter with visible disappointment. "Training bay's through those doors. Staff Sergeant Merrick runs the program. He'll sort you out." "I'm sure he will." Sarah clipped the badge on and walked through double doors into a corridor that smelled like industrial cleaner and old sweat. Motivational posters lined the walls. "Discipline is freedom. Train like you fight." All sun-faded and curling. The training bay opened wide ahead. Mats covered the floor. Equipment racks lined the walls. A cluster of soldiers stood near the center, and at the heart of them was Staff Sergeant Kyle Merrick. Tall, broad-shouldered, with the kind of presence that expected rooms to rearrange themselves around him. He spotted Sarah immediately. His grin spread slowly. "Well, well," he called out, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Look what the Navy sent us." Heads turned. Conversations stopped. Sarah walked forward, steady. "Lieutenant Kincaid, reporting for instructor duty." Merrick looked her up and down like he was appraising livestock. "SEAL, right? I remember when they pushed the first women through. Big news." "One of the first." He nodded, still grinning. "That's real impressive. Diversity Initiative must have been working overtime that year." A few men chuckled. Sarah didn't react. "Same standards as everyone else," she said evenly. Sure. Merrick waved a dismissive hand. "No disrespect. Just saying, this is a Ranger-heavy facility. We do things a little different here. A little harder. More old school." "I'll manage." "We'll see." He turned to the group. "All right, let's give our guest instructor a proper welcome. Kincaid, show us a basic disarm technique. Let's see how the Navy teaches it." Sarah set her bag down. "Who's partnering?" "Nolan, get up here." Corporal Travis Nolan stepped forward, thick-necked, linebacker build, still carrying himself like the high school football star he probably was. He cracked his knuckles theatrically. "Try not to hurt me too bad, ma'am," he said with mock humility. "I bruise real easy." Laughter rippled through the room. Sarah stepped onto the mat and faced him. "Standard disarm drill?" Merrick nodded. "Scenario 4, frontal weapon retention. Travis grabbed a rubber training knife from the rack and held it in a low grip. They squared off. "Ready?" Merrick asked. "Ready." "Go." Travis lunged fast, faster than he probably moved with the other guys, trying to prove something. Sarah sidestepped cleanly, redirected his arm with her left hand, locked his wrist with her right, and twisted. The knife clattered to the mat. Travis stumbled forward, off balance. She released him without flourish. "Incorrect thumb position," she said calmly. "You compromised your leverage." Travis straightened, face flushing. "Yeah, well, lucky shot." "Run it again." This time he came harder, trying to muscle through the technique. Sarah used his momentum against him, swept his lead leg, and put him flat on his back in under 3 seconds. The knife skittered across the mat. Dead silence. She stood over him, offering a hand up. He ignored it and got to his feet on his own, brushing off his pants like the mat had personally insulted him. Merrick clapped slowly. "Well, I guess they taught you something useful after all." Sarah met his eyes. "Same standards, same results." His smile thinned. "Right. Let's move on." The rest of the session proceeded smoother on the surface. Sarah demonstrated techniques, corrected forms, answered questions with precision that left no room for argument. But underneath, she felt it. The shift. The jokes got quieter. The glances got longer. Merrick watched her like he was recalculating something. When the session ended, Sarah headed toward the locker wing. That's when she saw the board. Tucked in a side hallway, half hidden behind a water fountain, a corkboard covered in photos, most harmless. Unit barbecues, obstacle courses, promotion ceremonies. Then the others. Photos of women, junior enlisted mostly, taken from behind, from below, mid-stretch, mid-squat. Angles that had nothing to do with training and everything to do with violation. Each marked up in black Sharpie with crude ratings, nicknames, comments that only worked if you stopped seeing them as human. People walked past without stopping. A couple guys glanced, smirked, kept moving. Sarah pulled out her phone and photographed the entire board methodically. Every picture, every caption, every face visible in the background. "Looking for something?" She turned. Sergeant Vanessa Chen stood a few feet away, arms crossed. Compact, sharp-featured, with an expression that said she'd learned to survive here by becoming part of the system. "Just familiarizing myself with the facility," Sarah said. Vanessa glanced at the board, then back at Sarah. "That's been up forever." "It's just guys blowing off steam." "Is it?" "Yeah, it is." Vanessa stepped closer, lowering her voice. "Look, I get it. You're new. You've got something to prove. But this place has a rhythm. You start poking at things that don't concern you, it gets uncomfortable for everyone." "Including you?" Vanessa's jaw tightened. "Especially me. I've worked my ass off to earn respect here. I'm not letting some outsider with a savior complex blow that up." Sarah held her gaze. "I'm not here to blow anything up. But I'm also not here to pretend I don't see what's right in front of me." Vanessa stared at her for a long moment, then shook her head. "Suit yourself. Just don't say nobody warned you." She walked away. Sarah stood there for another beat, then continued down the hallway. She passed the admin office and glanced at the security monitor mounted on the wall. Camera feeds cycled through. Hallways, entryways, training bays. One caught her attention. Bay 7. Exterior hallway view. She checked the timestamp in the corner. 14:47. She looked at her watch. 15:01. 14-minute discrepancy. Sarah kept walking, but her mind filed it away like a piece of evidence in a puzzle that was already assembling itself. That night, in her assigned quarters, bare walls, metal cot, window facing the motor pool, Sarah opened her laptop and started a detailed log. Day 1. Observations. Hostile reception from SSG, Kyle Merrick. Establishes dominance through public humiliation attempts. SGT, Vanessa Chen. Functions as social enforcer. Protects existing culture. Actively discourages complaints. Morale board, in Corridor B, contains non-consensual photographs of female personnel with degrading annotations, fully documented. Security camera outside Bay 7 shows 14-minute timestamp discrepancy, consistent with manual tampering to create surveillance gaps. She saved the file to an encrypted folder, backed it up to a secure cloud drive, then composed a message to a contact listed only as J. Torres, NCIS. Arrived Braxton. Cultural indicators consistent with prior intel. Observing and documenting. Maintaining operational cover. The reply came within seconds. Copy. Build the case properly. Evidence first. Don't engage until we have enough to make charges stick. Stay safe out there. Sarah set the phone down and lay back on the cot, staring at the water-stained ceiling tiles. She'd been in worse situations. Been shot at in Kandahar, nearly drowned during maritime interdiction ops, pushed past every conceivable limit during Hell Week. But this was different. This wasn't an enemy you could identify or a mission you could plan against. This was a culture that protected itself by making the cruelty invisible, by making the victims feel like they were the problem, by normalizing abuse until it looked like tradition. And the only way to dismantle it was from the inside. Carefully, methodically, with evidence they couldn't spin or deny. The next morning started with another demonstration session. Merrick assigned Sarah to lead drills with the junior personnel, mostly men, a handful of women who kept their eyes down and their responses minimal. "All right, Kincaid," Merrick said, leaning against the wall with his arms crossed. "Let's see that legendary SEAL endurance. Give us a plank hold. Show these kids what right looks like." Sarah dropped into position without hesitation. Merrick started a timer on his phone. "Anyone want to bet how long she lasts?" 2 minutes, someone called out. 90 seconds, another voice added. "She'll tap before a minute," Travis muttered. Sarah held the position. Her core burned, shoulders trembled. But she'd done this for 20 straight minutes during Hell Week, with an instructor standing on her back. This was nothing. 5 minutes passed, then 8, then 10. The room grew progressively quieter. Merrick's smirk faded by degrees. At 12 minutes, Sarah's entire body shook, sweat dripping onto the mat beneath her, but she didn't drop. Merrick finally stopped the timer. "All right, point made." Sarah stood smoothly, rolled her shoulders, and looked at him directly. "What's next?" His jaw tightened visibly. "Take 5 minutes." During the break, Sarah noticed Specialist Marcus Reed near the equipment racks, phone held at an odd angle. Not texting, filming. She watched him zoom in on one of the junior female soldiers bending down to adjust her boot laces. Sarah walked over casually. "Need something, Specialist?" Marcus jumped slightly, lowering the phone quickly. "Nah, just checking the training schedule." "Looked like you were recording." "Just documentation, standard training footage." "For what specifically?" He shrugged. "Records and stuff. You know how it is." Sarah glanced at his screen before he could lock it. She caught a folder name. Archive. Private. Do not share. "Right," she said slowly. "Standard documentation." Marcus pocketed the phone and walked away quickly, shoulders tense. Sarah made another mental note and added it to the growing file in her head. That afternoon, Merrick summoned her to his office, A cramped space with a metal desk, dented filing cabinets, and a corkboard thick with training schedules and administrative memos. "Close the door," he said, without looking up from his paperwork. Sarah did. "Sit down." She sat. Merrick finally looked at her, leaning back in his chair with studied casualness. "You're making people uncomfortable, Kincaid." "How so?" "You're too rigid. You don't joke around. Don't relax. Don't build rapport. It creates tension in the unit." "I'm here to teach close quarters combat. That's what I'm doing." "Part of teaching is connecting with the students, building trust. You keep acting like you're above everyone, and it causes problems." Sarah kept her voice level. "With all due respect, Staff Sergeant, I'm not here to socialize. I'm here to fulfill my assigned duties as an instructor." Merrick's eyes narrowed. "You know what your problem is. You think that trident on your chest makes you special, that it means something, but it doesn't. You're a political checkbox, a diversity win for some admiral's promotion packet, and everyone here knows it." Sarah didn't flinch. "Is there anything else?" He stared at her for a long moment, then his expression shifted, something calculated sliding into place behind his eyes. "Yeah, there is." He leaned forward slightly. "There's an optional training session tonight. Bay 7, 2100 hours. Advanced Stress Scenario Certification for personnel seeking additional qualifications. You should attend." "Optional?" "Completely voluntary. But if you're serious about proving you belong here, about showing you're not just here for appearance's sake, it would demonstrate commitment." Sarah nodded slowly. "I'll be there." Merrick's smile widened, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Good. Bring your A game, Lieutenant. We don't modify standards just because someone's wearing a trident. We'll see what you're really made of." Sarah stood and left the office. The moment the door closed behind her, her pulse kicked up, not from fear, but from recognition. She'd just been invited into the trap, and she was going to walk straight into it, but not the way they expected. Back in her quarters, Sarah opened her laptop and typed a new entry with precise detail. Day 2, 17:45 hours. SSG Merrick confrontational in private meeting. Accused me of not fitting in and being a diversity checkbox. Invited to optional advanced session in Bay 7 at 2100 hours. Same location with documented camera timestamp irregularities. Asterisk SPC Marcus Reed observed covertly filming female personnel without consent. Phone contains folder labeled Archive, Private, Do Not Share. Assessment. Coordinated setup highly probable. Likely humiliation or coercion scenario designed to compromise, discredit, or create leverage for future manipulation. Proceeding as planned. Evidence collection is primary objective. She pulled a small device from her bag, a civilian-grade audio recorder no bigger than a USB drive. She tested it. Crystal clear audio, 6-hour battery life. Then she composed another message to Torres. Entering Bay 7 at 2100 hours. Anticipate confrontation scenario designed to compromise position. If no check-in by 2300, initiate protocol and pull all available surveillance footage. Torres responded almost immediately. Negative. Do not enter alone. This is not worth the personal risk. We can build the case another way. Sarah stared at the screen for a long moment, then typed her response. Need them on record with clear intent and verbal admissions. Only way to make federal charges stick and prevent them from claiming misunderstanding or training gone wrong. This is the play. Trust the process. A longer pause this time. Audio recorder active at all times. Check in at 2300 sharp. If you miss it by even 1 minute, I'm coming in loud with everything I've got. Do you understand?"
"Understood. We'll check in on time."
Sarah clipped the tiny recorder inside her left sleeve, positioning it where it would be invisible unless someone was specifically searching for it. She tested the activation button. One press. Vibrated once to confirm recording. Then she lay back on the cot and closed her eyes. Not to sleep. To prepare. To mentally rehearse every possible scenario. Because in just over 3 hours, she was going to walk into a room full of people who thought she was weak. Who thought she was a checkbox. Who thought they could humiliate her, record it, and use it to destroy her career, or silence her forever. They had no idea she'd been documenting their operation since the moment she arrived. They had no idea that every word they were about to say would be recorded in crystal clear audio. They had no idea that the woman they were about to corner wasn't a victim. She was a federal witness, and she was about to hand them enough rope to hang themselves. Sarah opened her eyes and checked her watch. 2,047 hours. 13 minutes until she walked into Bay 7. 13 minutes until everything changed. She stood up, squared her shoulders, and headed for the door. It was time to spring the trap. Their trap. On them. Sarah walked down the empty corridor toward Bay 7, her footsteps echoing off the cinder block walls. The hallway lights flickered intermittently, casting uneven shadows. She checked her watch. 2,058 hours. 2 minutes early. She paused outside the door and pressed the button on her sleeve recorder. One soft vibration confirmed it was active. Then she took a breath, not from nerves, from focus, and pushed the door open. Bay 7 was darker than the main training area. Half the overhead lights were off, creating pockets of shadow along the walls. The mats looked freshly cleaned. Too clean, like someone had prepared the space. Merrick stood near the center, arms crossed. Travis leaned against the far wall, blocking the only exit. Marcus sat on a bench with his phone already in hand, screen glowing. Vanessa stood in the corner, expression unreadable. "Right on time," Merrick said. "I like that. Shows discipline." Sarah stepped inside. The door clicked shut behind her. Then she heard the second sound, heavier, metallic. A lock engaging. "Safety protocol," Travis said from behind her. "Can't have trainees wandering in during advanced scenarios." Sarah turned slowly, cataloging positions. Travis at the door, 6 feet back. Marcus, 10 feet to her right, phone raised. Vanessa, 12 feet to her left, arms still crossed. Merrick directly ahead, 8 feet. "What's the scenario?" Sarah asked evenly. Merrick smiled. "Stress test. We need to see how you handle high-pressure situations. Real combat isn't clean. It's messy, confusing. Sometimes you don't know who's on your side." "Understood. What are the parameters?" "You'll know them when we start." He nodded to Marcus. "Recording?" Marcus held up his phone. "Rolling." Sarah's pulse stayed steady. Good. They were documenting themselves. "Here's the thing, Kincaid," Merrick said, taking a step forward. "We've had a lot of so-called special operators come through here. Most of them talk a big game. But when things get real, when it's not a controlled environment with safety nets, they fold." "I don't fold." "We'll see." Another step. Because this isn't about techniques or drills. This is about whether you can handle what actually happens in the field. The chaos, the uncertainty, the moments when protocol goes out the window. Sarah kept her hands loose at her sides. "I've been in the field, Staff Sergeant. 2 combat tours. I know what chaos looks like." Travis laughed from behind her. "Bet you had a whole team babysitting you, though, making sure the diversity hire didn't get hurt." Sarah didn't turn around. I was a combat medic. I pulled 3 wounded operators out of a kill zone in Kandahar while taking fire from 2 positions. Want to see the commendation? Anyone can get a medal, Merrick said. Doesn't mean you earned it. Then test me properly. Standard scenario, standard rules. Merrick's smile widened. This is the test, Lieutenant. And the rules are simple. You do exactly what we tell you. You say exactly what we tell you to say. And if you cooperate, you walk out of here with your certification, and we all move on. Sarah's mind sharpened. There it was, the setup starting to reveal itself. And if I don't cooperate? Then things get complicated. Merrick glanced at Marcus. Make sure you're getting this. Marcus adjusted his angle. Got it. Vanessa shifted her weight, but said nothing. Merrick took another step closer, now within arm's reach. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to look at that camera and admit that you're not qualified to be here, that you only made it through SEAL training because the Navy needed a headline, that you're in over your head. Sarah stared at him. No. No? He tilted his head. You sure about that? I'm sure. See, that's the wrong answer. Merrick moved faster than she expected, his hand shooting out to grab her shoulder. Sarah sidestepped, but Travis was already moving from behind, grabbing her other arm. Whoa, whoa, Travis said with mock concern. Don't want you hurting yourself. Just relax. Sarah didn't fight, yet. She needed more words, more evidence. Merrick stepped in close, his face inches from hers. You think you're tough? You think the trident means something? It means I earned my place. It means you're a political stunt. His hand came up and gripped her jaw, forcing her to look at the camera. Now say it. Say you don't belong here. Sarah's recorder was catching everything. Every word, every touch, every threat. No. Merrick's grip tightened. Wrong answer. Travis yanked her arm back harder, pulling her off balance. Come on, Lieutenant. Just say the words. Make it easy on yourself. Marcus moved closer with the phone. Smile for the camera, ma'am. This is going to look great in the archive. That word, archive. Sarah filed it away even as her body calculated distances, angles, vulnerabilities. What archive? She asked. Marcus grinned. The one where we keep all the special training footage. You know, for quality control. Making sure everyone understands the standards. How many videos are in this archive? Merrick's eyes narrowed. Enough. And you're about to star in the next one. Vanessa finally spoke up. Just do what they're asking, Kincaid. It's easier if you don't fight it. Sarah looked at her. How many women have you brought here? Vanessa's expression flickered. I don't know what you're talking about. Yes, you do. How many? Shut up, Merrick snapped. His hand moved from her jaw to her throat, not choking, just controlling. Here's the new deal. You say what we tell you, or this goes from uncomfortable to career-ending real fast. You're already on camera assaulting a commissioned officer. Travis laughed. Nah, this is just training. Things get physical in training. Everyone knows that. Especially when the camera timestamps are manipulated, Sarah said calmly. The room went silent. Merrick's grip loosened slightly. What did you say? The hallway camera outside this bay. 14-minute discrepancy. Someone's been manually adjusting it, creating gaps in surveillance coverage. Which means this isn't the first time you've used this room for something off the books. Marcus lowered his phone slightly. She's guessing. I'm not. Sarah kept her voice steady. I checked the maintenance logs. Camera calibration every Friday at 1800. Same time, every week, same tech. And every single time,
There's a corresponding gap in the footage that matches up with videos in your archive.
Merrick's face hardened.
You've been snooping. I've been observing. There's a difference.
She's fishing, Vanessa said quickly. She doesn't know anything. Sarah turned her head as much as Merrick's grip allowed and looked directly at Vanessa.
You texted me yesterday. Told me not to make this complicated. Exact words. People here have a rhythm. You disrupt it, and it gets uncomfortable for everyone. That's not advice. That's a warning. You've been recruiting for them.
Vanessa's face went pale.
I was trying to help you.
By luring me into a room where they could coerce me on camera? How many others did you help? Shut her up, Travis said, his voice rising. Seriously, shut her up. Merrick's hand tightened on Sarah's throat again.
You think you're smart? You think you figured something out?
Sarah didn't struggle.
I think you've done this before, multiple times, and I think you're about to do it again. But this time, you're making a mistake.
Yeah? What's that?
You're telling me exactly how your operation works.
Merrick's eyes widened slightly. Then he glanced down at Sarah's sleeve, where the recorder was hidden. But he didn't see it. He was looking for something obvious. A phone, a camera, not a device the size of a thumb drive. His expression shifted to something colder.
Doesn't matter what you think you know. Who's going to believe you? 4 witnesses against 1. And we've got the video to prove you came in here looking for special treatment. That's not what your video shows.
It will once we edit it. Marcus held up his phone. Amazing what you can do with timestamps and selective cuts. We can make this look however we want. Sarah's mind raced. They were confessing methodology, strategy, intent.
How many women are in your archive?
She asked again. Enough that one more won't make a difference, Merrick said. There it was. Admission of a pattern. Multiple victims. Travis shifted his grip on her arm. Come on, Merrick. Let's just get this done. She's not going to cooperate. She will. Merrick leaned in closer. Because if she doesn't, we don't just ruin her career. We make sure every single person she ever serves with knows she couldn't hack it, that she quit, that she cried, that she begged.
I don't beg.
Everyone begs eventually. His free hand moved to his belt. Now put this in your mouth. He pulled out a rubber mouthguard, the kind used for sparring, but the way he held it, the way Marcus angled the camera, made it clear this wasn't about safety equipment. Sarah's stomach turned, but her mind stayed razor sharp.
No.
Do it, or we make this worse.
Worse how?
Merrick's smile was ugly. You really want to find out? Travis twisted her arm harder. Just do it, Lieutenant. Say a few words, bite down on this for the camera, and we let you go. That's the deal.
And if I refuse?
Then we stop being nice, Merrick said. And trust me, you don't want that. Sarah met his eyes.
You're already not being nice. You're assaulting an officer, recording it, threatening to manipulate evidence, and admitting you've done this before. That's not training. That's conspiracy.
Marcus stepped closer, phone still recording. Big words for someone who's about to be on the worst highlight reel of her life.
How many highlights are in your archive, Marcus? 50? 100?
He blinked. I don't.
The folder on your phone.
Archive. Private. Do not share. How many files? His face drained of color. Vanessa moved toward the door.
I'm done. I'm out.
Stay where you are, Merrick snapped.
No. She knows too much. This is over.
It's over when I say it's over. Merrick's voice rose. We've come too far to back out now. Sarah filed every word away. The recorder was getting it all.
Let me go, she said quietly. Right now, before this gets worse for all of you. Travis laughed, but it sounded forced. You threatening us? I'm giving you a chance to stop. Merrick's hand moved from her throat to her jaw again, fingers digging in. You don't give us chances. We give you options. And right now, your options are cooperate or regret it. I choose option 3. There is no option 3. Sarah's voice went cold. Yes, there is. It's called evidence. Merrick froze. What? I've been recording since the moment I walked in. The room went dead silent. Marcus lowered his phone.
She's bluffing. Am I? Sarah kept her eyes on Merrick. You grabbed my throat. Travis grabbed my arm. You threatened to ruin my career. Marcus admitted to an archive of videos. Vanessa admitted to recruiting women. You said one more won't make a difference. All of it recorded, all of it admissible. Merrick's face went white, then red. Where? Doesn't matter. It's already uploading to a secure server. Even if you destroy it, the backup's gone live. You're lying. Test me. His hand dropped from her jaw. Find it. Search her. Now. Travis started patting her down roughly, checking pockets. Sarah didn't resist. He wouldn't find the sleeve recorder. It was too small, too well hidden. Nothing, Travis said after a moment. Check again. I'm telling you there's nothing. Merrick stepped back, breathing hard. You're bluffing. There's no recording. Sarah smiled thinly. Then you've got nothing to worry about. So why do you look scared? His hand twitched toward her again, then stopped. Because he wasn't sure anymore. And uncertainty was leverage. Let me go, Sarah said. Unlock the door, and we all walk away from this. Or what? Or I file a formal complaint with NCIS, with audio evidence, with testimony, with your own words admitting to a pattern of abuse and evidence manipulation. Vanessa moved to the door and started unlocking it. I'm out. Do whatever you want. Vanessa, don't you dare. I'm not going to prison for this. She yanked the door open and disappeared into the hallway. Travis released Sarah's arm and stepped back. This is insane. We're done. I'm done. Nobody's done until I say, "Shut up, Kyle." Travis pointed at Sarah. If she's recording, we're screwed. You're screwed. I'm not going down for your power trip. He followed Vanessa out. That left Sarah, Merrick, and Marcus. Merrick stared at her, jaw working. You just destroyed your career. No, I documented yours. Marcus set his phone down on the bench, hands shaking. I didn't. I was just doing what I was told. You filmed it. You kept the archive. You're complicit. I'll delete everything, right now, all of it. Sarah shook her head. Too late. Federal investigators are already pulling cloud backups. You're bluffing, Merrick said again, but his voice cracked. Am I? Sarah walked toward the door slowly. Neither of them moved to stop her. Here's what happens next. I walk out of here. I check in with my contact at NCIS. And then you get a choice. You cooperate fully, hand over every device, every file, every name. Or you go down fighting and take maximum charges. Merrick's hands clenched into fists. I'll bury you. You can't, because I came prepared. You didn't. She reached the doorway and paused. And one more thing. The women in your archive? They're going to testify. Every single one. Because now, they know they're not alone. She stepped into the hallway. Behind her, she heard Marcus say quietly, We're done, man. We're completely done. Merrick didn't answer. Sarah walked back toward her quarters, her heart pounding now that the immediate threat had passed. She pulled out her phone and sent a message to Torres. Exiting Bay 7, full audio recorded, multiple admissions of pattern behavior, evidence manipulation, and conspiracy. Need immediate extraction and evidence preservation. The reply came instantly. On my way. Stay in your quarters. Lock the door. Do not engage further. Outstanding work. Sarah locked herself in her room and sat on the cot, hands trembling slightly now that the adrenaline was fading. She'd walked into the trap. But she'd turned it inside out, and now the real investigation could begin. Sarah sat on the edge of her cot, phone in one hand, audio recorder in the other. Her hands had stopped shaking, but her mind was racing through everything that had just happened. Every word, every admission, every threat captured in crystal clear audio. A knock came at her door, 3 sharp raps. Lieutenant Kincaid, NCIS Special Agent Torres. Open up. Sarah unlocked the door. Agent Jennifer Torres stepped inside quickly, followed by 2 other agents in tactical gear. Torres was compact, dark-haired, with the kind of eyes that didn't miss anything. You all right? Torres asked immediately. I'm fine. Define fine. No injuries, got everything we need. Torres gestured to one of the agents. Sweep the room, make sure it's clean. She turned back to Sarah. Show me what you have. Sarah handed over the audio recorder. 43 minutes of recorded conversation. Starts when I entered Bay 7, ends when I left. Multiple parties admitting to pattern behavior, evidence manipulation, maintaining an archive of coerced videos, and threatening a commissioned officer. Torres plugged the recorder into a laptop and pulled up the audio file. She scrubbed through it, listening to key sections. Her expression darkened with each passing minute. This is better than I hoped, she said quietly. Merrick admits to multiple victims. Marcus confirms the archive. Vanessa admits to recruitment. They laid out their entire operation. They thought they were in control. They were wrong. Torres saved the file to 3 separate encrypted drives. This is enough for federal charges. Conspiracy, assault, obstruction, pattern of abuse under Title 10. We can dismantle the whole network. How many women are we talking about? We don't know yet, but based on what Marcus said about the archive, I'd estimate at least a dozen, maybe more. Torres looked at Sarah. You just handed us the biggest case this base has seen in 20 years. One of the other agents spoke up. Ma'am, we've got movement outside. 2 subjects heading toward the admin building. Torres checked her watch. That'll be Merrick trying to get ahead of this. Let him. We've already seized the security footage and locked down the servers. He can run all he wants. Sarah stood. What about the other women? The ones already in the archive? We'll need to identify them from the videos, then reach out individually. Victim advocates will handle initial contact. But here's the reality. Most of them probably didn't report because they thought no one would believe them, or because Vanessa convinced them it was normal, or because they were threatened with career retaliation. And now? Now they've got corroborating evidence, multiple witnesses, federal backing. And most importantly, Torres tapped the audio recorder. They're not alone anymore. Another knock at the door. A different agent stuck his head in. Ma'am, we've got Specialist Reed in custody. He's asking for a lawyer. Good. He's smart. Torres turned to Sarah. Marcus is going to flip. He's not loyal to Merrick. He's loyal to staying out of prison. Once he realizes we've got him on film admitting to the archive, he'll trade everything he knows for a deal. What kind of deal? Reduced charges in exchange for full cooperation, complete access to his devices, names of everyone involved, testimony against Merrick, the works. Torres packed up the laptop.
But that's my job. Your job is to give a full statement, then stay out of sight while we execute warrants.
I want to be there when you arrest Merrick.
Not happening. You're a witness now, not an investigator. I need you clean and uncompromised for trial.
Sarah understood the logic, but it didn't make it easier.
What about Vanessa? She ran, made herself look guilty. But she also unlocked that door and potentially saved you from a worse situation. Her lawyer will argue she had a crisis of conscience. We'll argue she was complicit from the start. Depends on what the other victims say about her role. She recruited them. She normalized it.
She made them think it was their fault. Torres nodded grimly.
Then she's going down with the rest of them.
The next 6 hours moved like a controlled avalanche. Sarah gave her formal statement to 2 NCIS investigators, walking them through every detail from the moment she arrived at Braxton. The morale board, the timestamp discrepancy, Marcus filming without consent, Merrick's invitation to Bay 7, every word spoken inside that room. By 0400, warrants had been executed on Merrick's office, his quarters, and his personal vehicle. They found 3 external hard drives hidden in a locked footlocker, each containing folders organized by name, rank, and date. 17 women total, some active duty, some already separated from service, some who'd filed complaints that mysteriously disappeared. By 0600, Marcus had flipped. He sat in an interrogation room with his lawyer and laid out the entire operation. How Merrick had started it 3 years ago as a way to control troublemakers. How Vanessa had joined 6 months later, providing social cover and recruiting women who seemed isolated or eager to prove themselves. How Travis provided physical intimidation when needed. How the archive served as insurance. If anyone reported, they'd release edited footage making it look consensual or even initiated by the victim. By 0800, the base commander had been briefed. Colonel Parrish sat across from Torres in his office, face ashen as he reviewed the preliminary evidence. "How did this happen under my command?" he asked quietly.
"Because they were careful," Torres said. "They used training as cover. They manipulated evidence. They isolated victims. And they built a culture where reporting felt more dangerous than silence."
"I should have seen it."
"Maybe. But you're seeing it now. And what matters is what you do next."
Parrish looked up. "What do you need from me?"
"Full cooperation, complete access to personnel records,
and public acknowledgement that this happened, that victims will be supported, and that the command structure failed them." He swallowed hard. "You'll have it." By 1000, Merrick was in federal custody. 2 agents walked him out of his quarters in handcuffs while a dozen personnel watched from various windows and doorways. He kept his head down, jaw clenched, refusing to make eye contact with anyone. Travis was arrested an hour later, pulled out of a weapons qualification range mid-drill. He tried to argue that he was just following orders, that he didn't know it was illegal, that he thought it was sanctioned training. Nobody bought it. Vanessa turned herself in at 1300 with a lawyer already present. She sat in the interrogation room with her arms wrapped around herself, looking smaller than she had in Bay 7.
"I want to cooperate,"
she said immediately.
"I'll tell you everything."
Torres sat across from her, expression neutral. "Start with how you got involved." Vanessa took a shaky breath.
"Merrick approached me about 8 months ago. Said he needed someone who could connect with the younger female personnel, make them feel comfortable. He framed it as mentorship."
"And you believed that?"
"At first, yes. I thought I was helping, providing guidance, you know? But then he started asking me to bring specific women to Bay 7 for what he called advanced evaluations. He said it was about stress testing, seeing who could handle real pressure."
When did you realize it wasn't legitimate? Vanessa's voice cracked.
The third time. I walked in early and saw what they were doing, how they were talking to her, how Marcus was filming. I knew then it was wrong.
But you didn't report it.
No.
Why not? She looked down at her hands.
Because Merrick told me I was already complicit. That if I reported it, I'd go down too. That I'd lose my career, my reputation, everything. He said the only way to survive was to keep playing along.
Torres leaned forward. How many women did you bring to Bay 7?
6, directly. Maybe 3 more indirectly. I told them about optional training sessions and they went on their own.
And you knew what would happen to them.
Vanessa's eyes filled with tears. Yes, I knew. And I did it anyway because I was scared and selfish, and I told myself it wasn't my fault since I wasn't the one actually doing it. But you were doing it. You were the access point. You made them trust you. Then you fed them into a system designed to destroy them. I know. Vanessa wiped her eyes. I know. And I have to live with that.
Torres sat back. You're going to do more than live with it. You're going to testify. You're going to name every woman you recruited. You're going to explain exactly how the operation worked. And you're going to face them in court and own what you did.
I will. I'll do whatever you need.
That's not good enough. What they need is for you to tell the truth, not a sanitized version, not a self-serving narrative. The actual truth about how you enabled abuse because it was easier than standing up. Vanessa nodded, tears streaming down her face now.
Okay. Yes. I'll tell the truth.
Torres stood. Good, because that's the only way any of this gets fixed. By 1600, the story had spread across the entire base. Not officially, there was no announcement, no press release, but through the invisible network of whispers and text messages that moved faster than any formal communication. People knew something major was happening. They'd seen the arrests, seen NCIS agents everywhere, seen Bay 7 sealed with evidence tape. Sarah stayed in her quarters as ordered, but she could feel the tension through the walls. The base was holding its breath, waiting to see what came next. Torres stopped by at 17:30. We've started reaching out to the victims. 5 have agreed to speak with us so far. 2 more are considering it.
The rest we're still trying to locate.
How are they handling it?
Mixed. Some are relieved someone finally believes them. Some are angry it took this long. Some are terrified of retaliation or public exposure. But they're talking. That's what matters.
What about the evidence? Is it holding up?
Better than expected. Marcus's archive is meticulously organized. Dates, times, participants. He essentially built the prosecution's case for us. Combined with your audio recording and the testimony we're collecting, we've got enough to charge Merrick with conspiracy, assault, obstruction, pattern of abuse under military code, and violation of federal statutes protecting service members.
What's he looking at?
15 to 20 years minimum. Dishonorable discharge, loss of all benefits, lifetime registration as a violent offender.
Sarah felt something loosen in her chest. Not satisfaction exactly. Just the knowledge that the system was finally working the way it was supposed to.
What about the base? The culture that let this happen?
Torres sighed.
That's the harder fix. We can prosecute individuals, but changing institutional culture takes time and sustained effort. The base commander is implementing new reporting protocols, independent oversight, and mandatory training. But the real change comes from people like you refusing to accept the status quo.
People like me shouldn't have to walk into traps with hidden recorders to make the system work.
You're right, they shouldn't. But until the system fixes itself, people like you are the only thing standing between predators and victims.
A knock at the door interrupted them. Another agent. "Ma'am, we've got a situation. One of the victims is here. She's asking to speak with Lieutenant Kincaid." Torres looked at Sarah.
You don't have to do this.
"Who is it?"
Private First Class Amy Breslin. She was in the archive. October recording.
Sarah stood.
I'll talk to her.
Torres hesitated, then nodded.
Keep it brief. And remember, you're not a counselor, you're a witness. Don't promise anything we can't deliver.
The young woman waiting in the hall looked barely 20. Thin, pale, with dark circles under her eyes, like she hadn't slept in days. When she saw Sarah, her expression crumbled.
You're the one who recorded them, she said. Yes. They told me no one would believe me, that I wanted it, that if I reported it, they'd prove I was lying.
Her voice shook.
And I believed them. Sarah kept her voice gentle. They were wrong. But you got them. You actually got them. We got evidence. The rest is up to the investigators and prosecutors. But yes, they're in custody. They can't hurt anyone else. Amy's eyes filled with tears. I thought I was the only one. I thought it was my fault for going to that training session, for trusting Sergeant Chen when she said it was optional certification.
It wasn't your fault. None of it was. I know that now, but for 6 months I thought... She broke off, wiping her eyes.
I almost left the army. Just quit and disappeared because I couldn't stand being here where it happened.
You don't have to leave. This is your career, your future. They're the ones who have to go.
Will I have to testify?
Probably, if you're willing. Amy took a shaky breath.
What if I can't? What if I get up there and freeze?
Then you freeze, and we work through it. But you don't have to face this alone. There are victim advocates, counselors, other women who went through the same thing. You've got support now.
Because of what you did.
Sarah shook her head.
Because of what you're doing. Showing up, speaking up.
That takes more courage than anything I did. Amy looked at her for a long moment, then nodded.
Okay. I'll testify. I'll tell them everything.
That's all anyone can ask. After Amy left, Sarah sat back down on the cot, suddenly exhausted. The adrenaline that had carried her through the last 48 hours was finally draining away, leaving her hollow and wrung out. Torres appeared in the doorway. That was good. What you said to her.
I meant it.
I know. That's why it was good. Torres checked her watch. We're going to need your formal deposition tomorrow. After that, you'll be reassigned pending trial. Can't have you staying here where defense attorneys might argue witness tampering.
Where will I go?
Wherever you want. You've got options now. This case is going to make headlines. The Navy's going to want you for recruiting, for policy development, for being the face of institutional reform. Sarah laughed bitterly.
I didn't do this to become a poster child.
Doesn't matter. That's what happens when you take down a conspiracy. You become a symbol whether you want to or not. And if I just want to go back to my team? To doing the job I signed up for? Torres smiled slightly.
Then you do that. But the job changed, Sarah. You changed it. And there's no going back to the way things were.
Sarah knew she was right. Everything had shifted. The base, the culture, her own future. But as she lay down that night trying to sleep, she didn't think about what came next for her. She thought about Amy, and the 16 other women whose names she now knew, whose faces she'd seen in the archive files, whose voices had been silenced for months or years. And she thought about how many more were out there, at other bases, in other units, trapped in systems that protected abusers and punished victims. She'd won this battle, but the war was just beginning, and she was ready for it. 3 weeks later, Sarah sat in a federal courtroom in Phoenix, wearing her dress uniform with the trident gleaming on her chest. The preliminary hearing had drawn media from across the country. Reporters packed the gallery, cameras lined up outside. This wasn't just a military case anymore. It was national news. Staff Sergeant Kyle Merrick sat at the defense table in civilian clothes, his lawyer whispering urgently in his ear. He looked smaller somehow, diminished, like being stripped of his uniform had taken something essential from him. The prosecutor, a sharp-eyed woman named Captain Janet Reeves, stood and addressed the judge. Your Honor, the government is prepared to present evidence of a sustained conspiracy to assault, coerce, and intimidate female service members over a period of 3 years. The evidence includes audio recordings, video files, digital communications, and testimony from 17 victims. The defense attorney shot to his feet. Your Honor, my client maintains his innocence. The so-called evidence was obtained through entrapment. Lieutenant Kincaid deliberately provoked a confrontation and recorded it without consent. Captain Reeves didn't miss a beat. Lieutenant Kincaid was invited to a training scenario by the defendant. She accepted. The defendant then proceeded to assault her, threaten her, and admit on tape to maintaining an archive of similar incidents. There was no entrapment. There was documentation of an ongoing crime. The judge, a gray-haired woman who'd been on the bench for 20 years, looked at the defense attorney over her reading glasses. Counselor, are you arguing that your client's own words, admitting to a pattern of behavior and threatening a commissioned officer, should be inadmissible because he didn't know he was being recorded? That's exactly what I'm arguing, Your Honor. The recording violates... Arizona is a one-party consent state. Lieutenant Kincaid was party to the conversation. The recording is admissible. Motion denied. She looked at Reeves. Call your first witness. The government calls Lieutenant Sarah Kincaid. Sarah stood and walked to the witness stand, right hand raised. The bailiff administered the oath. She sat down, keeping her back straight, her voice clear. Reeves approached with a tablet. Lieutenant Kincaid, can you tell the court why you were assigned to Joint Training Facility Braxton? I was assigned as a guest instructor for a 2-week close-quarters combat rotation. And during that assignment, did you observe anything unusual? Yes, ma'am. Within the first day, I noticed several irregularities. Such as? Sarah kept her answers precise. A morale board in Corridor B displaying non-consensual photographs of female personnel with degrading captions. A security camera outside Bay 7 with a 14-minute timestamp discrepancy. Specialist Marcus Reed filming female personnel without their knowledge. And a hostile reception from Staff Sergeant Merrick that suggested my presence was unwelcome. Did you report these observations? I documented them and reported them to my NCIS contact, Special Agent Torres. We agreed I should continue observing and gathering evidence before taking formal action. Why not report immediately? Because individual observations could be dismissed as misunderstandings or coincidences. I needed to establish a pattern. Reeves pulled up a document on her tablet. On your second day at Braxton, did Staff Sergeant Merrick invite you to a training session? Yes, ma'am. He called it an optional advanced stress scenario certification in Bay 7 at 2100 hours. Did you attend? I did. Why, if you suspected it might be a setup? Sarah met the prosecutor's eyes. Because I needed them on record. I needed clear evidence of intent, methodology, and conspiracy. Suspicions don't hold up in court. Recorded confessions do. Reeves played the audio file. The courtroom went silent as Merrick's voice filled the space. You do exactly what we tell you. You say exactly what we tell you to say. And if you cooperate, you walk out of here with your certification, and we all move on. Then Sarah's voice, steady and calm. And if I don't cooperate? Then things get complicated. The audio continued. Merrick's admission about the archive, Marcus confirming the videos, Vanessa's attempted warning, Travis's physical intimidation, and finally, Merrick's damning words. We've done this before. One more won't make a difference. When the recording ended, several people in the gallery were crying. One reporter had her hand over her mouth. The judge's expression had gone from neutral to granite. Reeves turned back to Sarah. What happened after you left Bay 7? I returned to my quarters and contacted Agent Torres. NCIS executed warrants within hours. They seized digital devices, interviewed witnesses, and arrested the 4 primary conspirators. And the archive Merrick mentioned. Was it real? Yes, ma'am. 17 victims, multiple incidents, all documented and organized by name, rank, and date. The defense attorney stood. Objection. The witnesses characterizing the individuals in those videos as victims without establishing overruled, the judge said coldly. The court has reviewed the videos in camera. The characterization is appropriate. Sit down, counselor. He sat. Reeves continued. Lieutenant Kincaid, you're a Navy SEAL. You've been through some of the most demanding training in the military. Why didn't you simply fight back when Merrick assaulted you? Because fighting back wouldn't have stopped the system. It would have stopped one incident. I needed to expose the entire operation. That required documentation, not confrontation. Even though you were in danger? I assessed the risk and determined that gathering evidence was worth it. These men were predators, but they were also cowards. They wanted compliance, not combat. As long as I didn't give them what they wanted, I controlled the situation. And if you'd been wrong? If they'd escalated? Sarah's voice didn't waver. Then I would have defended myself, and we'd have less evidence. But I knew Torres was monitoring. I knew backup was minutes away. I knew the risk was calculated. Reeves nodded and turned to the judge. No further questions. The defense attorney approached for cross-examination. He was younger than Sarah expected, probably fresh from JAG school, trying to make a name for himself. Lieutenant Kincaid, you testified that you suspected a setup from the beginning, correct? Correct. So you deliberately walked into what you believed was a dangerous situation. I walked into a situation I believed I could control. That's rather arrogant, don't you think? Assuming you could control 4 people in an isolated room? Sarah met his eyes. I didn't assume. I planned. There's a difference. But you admit you provoked my client by refusing to cooperate with his training instructions. I refused to be coerced on camera. That's not provocation. That's self-defense. My client was conducting a stress test, a legitimate training scenario designed to... Your client was continuing a 3-year pattern of sexual harassment and assault disguised as training. The audio makes that clear. The attorney's face reddened. You can't possibly know his intent. He stated his intent on the recording, multiple times. He threatened me. He admitted to prior incidents. He confirmed the existence of an archive. Those aren't training protocols. Those are crimes. But you went in there knowing what you'd find. You wanted this confrontation. I went in there hoping to document criminal behavior so other women wouldn't have to endure what the previous 17 victims endured. If that makes me confrontational, I'll accept that characterization. The attorney tried a different angle. Isn't it true that you have a history of conflict with male personnel? Captain Reeves shot to her feet. Objection. Relevance? I'm establishing a pattern of behavior that suggests the witness may have misinterpreted. Overruled temporarily, the judge said. But tread carefully, counselor. Get to your point quickly. The attorney turned back to Sarah. During your SEAL training, weren't you involved in multiple incidents with instructors?
I was subjected to the same training as every other SEAL candidate. Some instructors didn't believe women should be there. I proved them wrong by meeting every standard.
But you filed complaints.
I filed one complaint when an instructor told me I should quit because women don't belong in combat. That complaint was upheld because it violated Navy policy.
So you have a history of using official channels to punish men who challenge you. Sarah's voice went cold. I have a history of holding people accountable when they violate regulations. That's not punishment. That's integrity. The attorney realized he was losing ground. No further questions. Reeves stood for redirect. Lieutenant Kincaid, the defense characterized your actions as confrontational. Do you believe confrontation is necessary to address sexual harassment in the military? I believe documentation is necessary. Confrontation is often unavoidable because abusers rarely stop when asked nicely. But the goal isn't confrontation, it's accountability. And in your opinion, did the system at Braxton fail these 17 women? Absolutely. The system failed them the first time someone reported and nothing happened. It failed them every time a superior saw warning signs and looked away. It failed them when the culture normalized abuse and punished victims for speaking up. My actions didn't create the confrontation. I just made sure it was documented. Reeves sat down. No further questions, Your Honor. The judge looked at Sarah. You're excused, Lieutenant. Thank you for your testimony. Sarah stepped down and returned to her seat. As she passed Merrick, he muttered something under his breath. She didn't react. He was already finished. The audio had destroyed any defense he might have mounted. The next witness was Marcus Reed. He'd taken a plea deal in exchange for testimony. He looked like he'd aged 10 years in 3 weeks. Reeves approached him carefully. Specialist Reed, can you tell the court about the archive you maintained? Marcus's voice was barely audible.
It was videos of women in Bay 7. Different scenarios. All recorded.
How many videos?
47 files. 17 different women. Some had multiple incidents.
A gasp went through the gallery. And who instructed you to record these videos?
Staff Sergeant Merrick. He said it was insurance. In case anyone reported, we'd have proof they were willing participants.
But they weren't willing, were they? Marcus shook his head, eyes down. No, ma'am. They were coerced, threatened. Some were told it was mandatory training. Others were told their careers would end if they didn't cooperate. And you knew this? Yes, ma'am. Why did you continue? Because I was scared. Merrick said if I stopped, he'd turn the videos over to investigators and claim I was running the operation. He said no one would believe me over a staff sergeant. So you kept recording? Yes, ma'am. And I kept organizing the files, dating them, labeling them, making it easy for him to find specific incidents. Did you ever consider reporting this to authorities? Marcus's voice cracked. Every day. But I was a coward. I chose my career over doing what was right. And now I have to live with that. Reeves let that sit for a moment. Are you willing to testify against Staff Sergeant Merrick in a full trial? Yes, ma'am. I'll testify to everything I know. It won't undo what I did, but maybe it'll help make sure he can't hurt anyone else. The defense attorney declined to cross-examine Marcus. There was nothing to gain. His testimony was devastating. The next witness was Vanessa Chen. She'd also taken a plea deal, but her testimony would be harder. She was the enabler, the one who made the victims trust her before feeding them into the system. She sat in the witness box looking hollow. When Reeves asked her to explain her role, Vanessa's voice shook.
I recruited them. I told them about optional training sessions. I made them feel safe. And then I walked them into situations where they'd be victimized.
She wiped her eyes.
I told myself I was just facilitating training, that I wasn't responsible for what Merrick did. But that was a lie. I knew exactly what I was doing.
Why did you do it?
Because Merrick offered me protection, status. He said as long as I helped him, I'd be insulated from the harassment other women faced.
I'd be one of the good ones, one of the team. She looked at the gallery where several of the victims sat.
I traded their safety for mine, and I'll regret it for the rest of my life.
How many women did you recruit?
9 directly, maybe 6 more indirectly by talking up the training program.
Did any of them thank you afterward?
Vanessa's face crumpled. No, because by the time they left Bay 7, they knew I'd betrayed them. Some confronted me, asked me how I could do that to another woman. I didn't have an answer then. I still don't.
What would you say to them now?
That I'm sorry isn't enough. That I own what I did. And that I'll spend the rest of my career, if I have one, making sure this never happens to anyone else.
Reeves stepped back. No further questions. During a recess, Sarah stepped outside for air. Several reporters tried to approach, but Torres intercepted them. No comments until after the verdict. One reporter persisted. Lieutenant Kincaid, what do you want people to know about this case?
Sarah paused, then turned. That the people who enable abuse are as dangerous as the people who commit it, because they make it look normal. They make victims doubt themselves, and they make reporting feel more dangerous than staying silent. If this case does anything, I hope it makes enablers realize they're not neutral. They're complicit.
Torres pulled her away before other questions could follow. Inside, the prosecution rested its case after calling 3 victims to testify. Each one told a similar story: Vanessa recruiting them, Bay 7, Merrick's threats, Marcus filming, the aftermath of shame and fear and wondering if reporting would make it worse. The defense put up a weak case. Character witnesses from Merrick who claimed he was a dedicated soldier, experts who argued the audio was taken out of context. None of it landed. The evidence was too overwhelming. After 2 days of testimony, the judge announced her ruling.
I've reviewed all evidence and testimony presented. The audio recording is clear. The video archive is documented. The victim's testimony is consistent and credible. I find sufficient cause to bind this case over for court-martial on all charges. Staff Sergeant Merrick will remain in custody pending trial. Specialist Reed and Sergeant Chen will be sentenced according to their plea agreements. This hearing is adjourned.
The gavel came down. Merrick's face went white. His attorney started arguing for bail, but the judge wasn't listening. Marshals escorted Merrick out of the courtroom in handcuffs. Sarah watched him go and felt nothing. Not satisfaction, not anger. Just the quiet certainty that justice was finally moving in the right direction. Outside, Torres found her on the courthouse steps. You did good in there.
I just told the truth.
That's what doing good looks like. Torres handed her a folder. Your reassignment orders. You've got 3 options: recruiting command, policy development, or back to your SEAL team. Sarah opened the folder and scanned the options. Then she looked up.
What would you do?
I'd take the policy job. You've got institutional knowledge now. You know how these systems fail. You could help fix them from the inside.
But that's not what you'd really do, is it?
Torres smiled. No. I'd go back to my team. Because that's where you belong. And because someone needs to prove that doing the right thing doesn't end your career. Sarah closed the folder.
Then that's what I'll do.
Good. Your team's waiting for you. They've been tracking this case. They're proud of you. Even though I'm going to be known as the SEAL who took down a conspiracy instead of the SEAL who completed the mission? You did complete the mission, just not the one you were assigned. The one you chose. Torres squeezed her shoulder. Go home, Sarah. You've earned it. Sarah looked back at the courthouse one last time, then walked toward the parking lot where her future was waiting. She'd walked into a trap. She'd turned it inside out, and now 17 women had their voices back. That was worth everything. 6 months after the preliminary hearing, Sarah stood in front of a classroom at the Naval Special Warfare Center in Coronado. 23 female SEAL candidates sat in front of her, notebooks open, eyes sharp with the kind of focus that came from knowing every word might be the difference between passing and failing. Close quarters combat isn't about strength, Sarah said. It's about leverage, timing, and making your opponent think they're winning right up until they're not. She demonstrated a technique, walking through it slowly. One of the candidates raised her hand. Ma'am, what do you do when someone outweighs you by 80 pounds and decides techniques don't matter? Sarah smiled slightly. You document it, then you break their grip and file charges. A few nervous laughs, but they understood. They'd all heard about Braxton, about Bay 7, about the trial that had ended 3 weeks ago with Merrick sentenced to 18 years in military prison, dishonorable discharge, and lifetime registration as a violent offender. After class, a young ensign approached. Lieutenant Kincaid, can I ask you something? Go ahead. Did you ever think about just quitting? Walking away before Braxton, before all of it got so public? Sarah considered the question. Every day during Hell Week, every time an instructor told me I didn't belong, every time someone looked at my trident like it was a participation trophy. She paused. But quitting would have proved them right. Staying proved them wrong. And now? Now I teach people like you how to stay without having to fight the same battles I did. That's the whole point. The ensign nodded and walked away. Sarah gathered her materials and headed to her office, a small space with a desk, a computer, and a window overlooking the Pacific. Her phone buzzed with a message from Torres. Final victim restitution hearing tomorrow. Thought you'd want to know. Sarah typed back. Will any of them be there? 12 confirmed, including Amy Breslin. She's speaking. Sarah sat down heavily. The restitution hearing was the last piece, the final accounting of what Merrick and his conspirators had taken from their victims. Not just dignity or safety, but careers, mental health, trust in the institution they'd sworn to serve. The next morning, Sarah drove to the federal courthouse in San Diego. She wasn't required to attend, but she needed to see it through, needed to witness the ending she'd helped create. The courtroom was smaller this time, fewer reporters, no cameras, just the people who mattered. Victims, families, attorneys, and the judge who would decide what accountability looked like in dollars and consequences. Amy Breslin sat in the front row, wearing her dress uniform. She looked different than she had 6 months ago, stronger, less haunted. The judge called the hearing to order. This court will hear victim impact statements for the purpose of determining restitution in the matter of United States versus Staff Sergeant Kyle Merrick and co-conspirators. Who wishes to speak first? Amy stood. She walked to the podium with her back straight and her hands steady. My name is Private First Class Amy Breslin. 6 months ago, I thought my military career was over. Not because I failed, because I was targeted by people who were supposed to train me. Her voice didn't shake. Sergeant Chen told me about an optional certification program, said it would help my career. I trusted her because she was a woman, a senior NCO, someone who should have had my back. She paused, gathering herself. Instead, she walked me into Bay 7, where Staff Sergeant Merrick and his team recorded me saying things I didn't want to say, doing things I didn't want to do, all while telling me it was normal, that everyone went through it, that if I reported it, I'd be the problem. For 6 months, I believed that. I thought I was weak, thought I'd failed some test I didn't understand. I was planning to leave the army quietly and never tell anyone what happened. She looked up, meeting the judge's eyes. Then Lieutenant Kincaid documented what they did to her. And suddenly, I wasn't alone anymore. Suddenly, there was proof that it wasn't my fault, that I wasn't weak, that they were predators. Amy's voice strengthened. Because of her courage, I found mine. I testified. I faced Merrick in court. I told the truth about what he took from me. And now I'm finishing my enlistment with my head up, knowing I survived something designed to break me. She stepped back from the podium. Several people in the gallery were crying. Sarah kept her expression neutral, but something in her chest tightened. 8 more victims spoke. Each one told variations of the same story. Trust betrayed, safety violated, careers derailed, mental health shattered. And then the slow climb back, supported by each other and by the knowledge that the system had finally worked. The last to speak was a former specialist named Kayla Morrison, who'd left the Army 2 years earlier without reporting what happened to her. I thought I'd buried it, she said quietly. Thought if I never talked about it, it would stop hurting. But when I saw the news about Braxton, about Lieutenant Kincaid's testimony, I realized I had to come forward. Not for justice. I'd already given up on that. For the record, so that when my daughter asks me someday why I left the military, I can tell her the truth. That I served honorably until dishonorable people made it impossible to stay, and that I finally spoke up when it mattered. When she sat down, the judge took a long moment before speaking. I've presided over many cases in my career, cases involving violence, fraud, betrayal of public trust. But this case stands apart because of the systematic nature of the abuse and the institutional failures that enabled it. She looked at the defense table where Merrick's attorney sat alone. The defendant is already serving 18 years. No amount of restitution will undo the harm. But this court can acknowledge what was taken and attempt to quantify it in the only way our system allows. She announced the restitution amounts: medical expenses, counseling costs, lost wages for those who'd left service, educational support for those rebuilding careers. The total ran into hundreds of thousands of dollars. Additionally, the judge continued, this court is ordering that all 17 victims receive full medical and mental health benefits for life, regardless of their service status. The Department of Defense will establish a victims fund to support ongoing treatment and career rehabilitation. And most importantly, she paused, the policies that failed these service members will be revised. Independent oversight will be mandatory at all joint training facilities. Reporting mechanisms will be strengthened, and the culture that normalized this abuse will be dismantled, piece by piece. She looked at the victims. You should never have had to fight for this. But because you did, hundreds of future service members won't face what you faced. That's your legacy. Not what was done to you, but what you prevented by speaking up. The hearing adjourned. Sarah stood to leave, but Amy caught her in the hallway. Thank you, Amy said simply. You don't have to thank me. Yes, I do. You could have fought back in that room and walked away, but you documented everything instead. You built a case. You made sure all of us had proof we weren't crazy, weren't weak, weren't making it up. Amy's eyes were bright. You gave us our voices back. Sarah shook her head. You always had your voices. I just made sure people had to listen.
Same thing.
No, it's not. What I did was strategic. What you did, standing up after being silenced, testifying after being threatened, rebuilding after being broken. That's courage. Don't confuse the two. Amy smiled slightly.
Can't we both be brave?
Yeah, we can both be brave. 3 months later, Sarah received orders for a new assignment. Not policy, not recruiting. A special operations unit based overseas. Real missions, real purpose. The career she'd earned continuing on the trajectory she'd fought to maintain. The night before she deployed, Torres called. Saw your orders. Back to the fight. That's the idea. You could have taken the policy job, made real institutional change from the inside.
Someone else will do that. Someone who wants to fight bureaucracies instead of enemies. That's not me.
Torres laughed. No, it's not. But before you go, you should know. The Braxton case changed things. New reporting protocols are being implemented across all branches. Victim advocacy offices are being expanded. Independent oversight is real now, not just on paper. You did that.
We did that. You built the case. The victims testified. I just documented one incident.
You documented the incident that broke everything open. Don't minimize that. Torres paused. How are you doing, really? Sarah thought about it.
I'm good. Better than I expected.
No nightmares? No regrets?
I dream about it sometimes, but not like you'd think. I don't dream about being trapped. I dream about the moment I realized I had them, that their own words were destroying them.
That feeling of control, that's what I remember. That's healthy, I think. It's honest. Good enough. Torres's voice softened.
Stay safe out there, Sarah. The world needs more people like you.
People who walk into traps?
People who turn traps into justice.
Sarah deployed 2 days later. Her team welcomed her back without fanfare. No speeches, no special treatment. Just the quiet acknowledgement that she'd done something hard and come back stronger. The first night in country, her team leader pulled her aside. Heard about Braxton.
I figured.
You know what everyone's saying?
That I'm a troublemaker who can't let things go?
He laughed. That you're exactly the kind of SEAL we need. Someone who fights smart, documents everything, and doesn't quit when the system pushes back. He clapped her shoulder. Welcome back, Kincaid. Glad to have you. For the next 18 months, Sarah ran operations, trained local forces, and did the job she'd signed up for. No headlines, no interviews. Just the quiet work of being a SEAL. But twice she got emails from women she'd never met, women who'd heard about Braxton, who'd faced their own versions of Bay 7, who'd reported because they knew someone had done it before and survived. One email stood out. It was from a young Marine corporal stationed in Okinawa. I was planning to stay quiet, accept that this is how things are. Then I read about what you did, how you documented everything, how you made them convict themselves. So I did the same thing. I recorded the harassment. I filed charges. And yesterday, my command sergeant major was relieved of duty. I'm writing to say thank you, not just for what you did, but for showing me I could do it too. Sarah read the email 3 times, then forwarded it to Torres with a simple message.
This is why it mattered.
Torres replied immediately. This is why it will keep mattering. You started something, Sarah. It's bigger than Braxton now. 2 years after the Braxton trial, Sarah was promoted to full lieutenant and invited to speak at the Naval Academy. She stood in front of 400 midshipmen and told them about leadership, integrity, and the difference between following orders and doing what's right. At the end, a young woman raised her hand.
Ma'am, what would you say to someone who sees misconduct but is afraid to report it?
Sarah thought about Amy, about the 17 victims, about the Marine corporal in Okinawa, and all the others who'd found their courage in someone else's example.
I'd say fear is normal. The system is designed to make reporting feel more dangerous than staying silent. But here's what I learned. Silence doesn't protect you. It protects them. The people who abuse power count on you being afraid. They count on you thinking you're alone. They count on you believing that speaking up will destroy your career, while staying quiet will save it.
She paused, making eye contact with the young woman.
But the truth is, your career is already at risk if you're serving in an environment where misconduct is normalized. So you have a choice. You can accept it and hope you survive, or you can document it, report it, and make sure the next person doesn't have to make the same choice. And if the system doesn't back you up? Then you make noise until it does. You find allies, you gather evidence, you build a case they can't ignore. You refuse to let them make you the problem when the system is broken.
Sarah's voice strengthened.
That's not idealism, that's survival. Because the only way to serve honorably is to demand that honor from the institution.
The auditorium was silent. Then one person started clapping, then another. Within seconds, all 400 midshipmen were on their feet. Sarah stood there, accepting their applause, thinking about how far she'd come from that Arizona desert and that locked room in Bay 7. After the speech, the young woman who'd asked the question approached.
That was really brave. What you did at Braxton.
It was really necessary. There's a difference.
I don't think so. I think sometimes necessary and brave are the same thing.
Sarah smiled.
Maybe you're right. I hope I never have to do what you did. But if I do, I hope I have your courage.
You will. Because courage isn't something you're born with. It's something you choose when the alternative is worse. 3 years after Braxton, on a quiet Tuesday in November, Sarah received a message from Torres. Merrick's appeal was denied, sentence upheld. He'll serve the full 18 years. Marcus completed his sentence and was dishonorably discharged. Vanessa finished her sentence last month, lost all benefits. She sent you a letter, forwarding now. The letter was short.
Lieutenant Kincaid, I know I don't deserve your time or your forgiveness.
I'm writing because my therapist says I need to take accountability beyond my legal sentence. What I did to those women, to you, was unforgivable. I told myself I was surviving, but I was just protecting my own comfort at their expense. I can't undo it, but I'm spending the rest of my life making sure other women don't make my mistakes. I volunteer with veteran support organizations now. I talk to groups about how good people become complicit in bad systems. I tell them my story not to excuse myself, but to warn them. I want you to know that your courage didn't just save future victims. It saved me, too, from becoming something worse than I already was. I'll never stop being ashamed, but I'm trying to be useful. That's all I can do now. Vanessa. Sarah read it twice, then deleted it. Not out of anger, out of closure. Vanessa's redemption wasn't Sarah's responsibility. The work was done. The system had changed. The victims had justice. That was enough. 5 years after Braxton, Sarah retired from active duty with full honors. She'd completed over 100 combat missions, trained 2 generations of SEAL candidates, and helped rewrite the Navy's policies on sexual harassment and assault prevention. At her retirement ceremony, the speaker was Admiral Patricia Chen, no relation to Vanessa, who'd become the Navy's first female Chief of Naval Operations. Lieutenant Commander Kincaid represents the best of what we ask from our service members, Admiral Chen said. Not just tactical excellence, but moral courage. The willingness to stand up when standing down would be easier. The strength to document injustice when fighting would be simpler. The integrity to demand that our institutions live up to the values we claim to represent. She turned to Sarah. Because of your actions at Braxton, we've implemented new training protocols across all services. We've strengthened reporting mechanisms. We've created independent oversight. We've prosecuted over 40 similar cases that might have gone unreported if you hadn't shown that the system could work. That's your legacy. Not just what you survived, but what you prevented. Sarah accepted her retirement medal and looked out at the crowd. Amy Breslin was there, now a staff sergeant running her own training program. 3 other Braxton victims were there, all still serving, all thriving. And scattered throughout were dozens of faces she didn't recognize. People who'd been inspired, protected, or empowered by what happened in that courtroom 5 years ago. After the ceremony, a reporter caught her outside. Commander Kincaid, last question. What do you want people to remember about the Braxton case? Sarah thought about it. About Bay 7. About the audio recorder. About Merrick's face when he realized he'd confessed to everything. About Amy finding her courage. About the system finally, slowly, reluctantly changing. I want them to remember that the people who enable abuse are just as dangerous as the people who commit it. That silence protects predators and destroys victims. That documentation is power. That courage isn't the absence of fear, it's the refusal to let fear make your decisions for you. She paused. And I want them to remember that change doesn't happen because institutions suddenly develop consciences. It happens because individuals refuse to accept the status quo and fight like hell to make things better. Any regrets? Only that it took so long, that 17 women had to suffer before one of them had the resources and the rank and the sheer, stubborn refusal to let it go. I wish I'd been there sooner, but I wasn't, so I made sure I was there when it counted. What's next for you? Sarah smiled. I'm going to teach, work with veteran organizations, make sure the next generation doesn't have to learn these lessons the hard way. She turned to leave, then looked back. And I'm going to keep telling anyone who'll listen. If you see something wrong, document it, report it, and refuse to let them make you the problem. That's how you change the world. One recorded conversation at a time. She walked away from the cameras, from the ceremony, from the uniform she'd worn for 12 years. But the work didn't end. It never really ended. Because somewhere, right now, another woman was walking into her own version of Bay 7. Another predator was counting on silence. Another enabler was normalizing abuse. And somewhere, someone was going to remember Sarah's story and think, if she could do it, so can I. That was the real victory. Not the convictions, not the policy changes, not the headlines. The knowledge that courage was contagious. The documentation was power. That refusing to be silent could dismantle systems that had stood for decades. Sarah had walked into a trap designed to break her. Instead, she'd turned it into a weapon that broke them. And in doing so, she'd shown countless others that they could do the same. That was worth everything. The fear, the risk, the years of testimony and scrutiny and public exposure. Because now, when someone asked if one person could make a difference, the answer was simple. Yes. if they're brave enough to record it, smart enough to document it, and stubborn enough to refuse to let it go. Sarah Kincaid had proven that, and her legacy would keep proving it, long after she'd moved on to the next fight.